I. Oops. Were there pictures on the wall? No, I never got any. What time is the thing tonight? 5:30. I'm sorry, but tonight is my grandson. It's the opening night for his high school hockey. So it's the first game of the season. And it's so exciting because all the kids go there and they're yelling and cheering. And I just you'll be able to have the hors d'oeuvres there, so you can have their glass of wine.
Yeah.
I'm crazy with this hockey because this is the
Meghalt a telefonom.
I'm not gonna miss one game this year. When it's over, it's over. It's the first night, it's opening night. All right, so we'll see you later. All right. Yeah. All right. You know where it is. You know where Lisa lives. Yeah. Okay.
All right, everybody. Who's ready to ramp up? Yeah, y'all not talking to me. Who's ready to ramp up in here? Where's my hands? Come on, put your hands together. Shake yourself. What? Oh no. Where's my Zoomers? Are my Zoomers? Can you guys hear me okay? You can see me okay?
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about, guys. Welcome to the ramp program. Listen, I'm going to try to stick to the script. But first of all, we just want to acknowledge, our sponsors. First of all, thank you to all of you for showing up, post-COVID. Who's happy to be back in the room with other people now? Yeah, I'm happy to be back too. I got my mask in my pocket, just in case I hear a cough, but look, the Zoomers are safe. All right, but thanks to Prime Lending, they're our #1 referral lender. So let's clap it up for them. I think they sponsor lunches and stuff, right? Realtors love food. Oh yeah, and then of course Ask Insurance, which is affiliated with this guy who won't tell you, right? Yeah, let's clap it up for Ask Insurance, our other sponsors. All right, so guys, in case you didn't know, I'm actually a recipient of this program. Like, I'm a graduate. Like, I'm not just the hair club president, I'm also, I was in the MORE program, okay? And I was sitting out there and I was like this starry-eyed real estate agent 4 years ago, just 4 short years ago. And I came to this program and I saw young, ambitious entrepreneurs up here who were killing it. And I said, that's gonna be me. If that's gonna be me, does anybody feel that way? Like, that's gonna be me? I could stand in front of the room. Maybe not, some of you look petrified. But listen, this profession is one of the most lucrative professions you could ever be in. And it's gonna be what you make it, all right? So go out there and make it happen. That's who I was out there. And now I'm here, I'm super excited. Anybody super excited about who we're gonna hear from? Like, okay, so you guys don't know who you got in front of you. Maybe you do, but you probably don't, because he's so modest, okay? Some of the ladies out there, he's taken now, all right, but he's so cute. And listen, he's before us, but I want you, those of you who are in Zoom land, you don't have the flyer in front of you for the event coming up January 14th. It's called Quest for Success Legacy Wealth Builders. It's my event I'm putting on, guys. It's gonna be like a financial rock concert, okay? We're gonna be teaching people how to create generational wealth through real estate, which is still the #1 way, all right, to generate wealth in this country. We're gonna teach all the attendees how to get into entry-level stocks and investments. A lot of people don't know, you're walking around in Gucci and Chanel, you should own a piece of the pie, all right? So we're gonna show you how to get into that world. We're also gonna show you how to hedge yourself, how to insulate yourself with life insurance. It's not just a death benefit, you leave people a bunch of money when you die. but you'll have money while you live. You'll turn yourself into your own bank. We're going to teach you that play. And also, the most important thing I'm excited about is we have our $1 Million Broker Circle, which Alan's going to be a part of. Mike Stroud is going to be in the building. Most of y'all that know him, love him. All right, so many others. Aaron Hamill. It's a $1 Million Broker Circle where we're going to teach you how to come up, how to be better than us even, the pros and cons of how to get your business off the ground and get you soaring in 2023. Sound good? Yes or yes? Yes or yes? Yes. So now I got to present to you this awesome young gentleman. I'm going to read his bio, guys. He started real estate in late 2015. The next year, 2016, he founded a brokerage out of his basement called Yellowbrook. Sounds like Steve Jobs to me. All right. Garage basement. Since then, he's grown the brokerage from himself and a partner to nearly 100 agents, guys. That's underneath him. He does over 300 million in annual sales and volume. Pretty impressive. He was 2017's Realtor of the Year. He's coached hundreds of agents and has been responsible for dozens, becoming nationally top producing realtors. Who wants to be nationally top producing agent in here? Yeah? All right. 2021, he founded Ask Insurance, which has over 70 carriers and a book of business over $2 million. He's a real estate investor that's flipped over 100 properties. All right. He is Alan. Okay. Alan, he's the largest accomplishment being dedicated. First of all, he's a single father to his son, Alan Stewart the third. Okay. There's 3 of them. But last, and I think this is the most important paragraph about him before I put him up, guys. Alan believes in living a large life through faith, self-improvement, and disciplined consistency. And that's why he began to give more, all right? That's why he helps raise tens of thousands of dollars for charity. Charity. Let's give back, guys. Let's do our thing. The more money you make, guess what? The more money you can give. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I got excited. Forgive me. Every single year for the last half decade, he's been given to a variety of different causes. But guys, I just got to tell you, this young man is so full of life, so full of energy. I'm happy to call him my friend. He's got a motorcycle, guys. I mean, like, come on. Who doesn't love a guy on a motorcycle? Get up on your feet right now. Get up on your feet right now. If you're on Zoom, get up at your desk. I present to you right now. All right, Yellow Spring Realty, Alan Stewart Jr. Woo! Go ahead and bring him up, Brody.
All right, we're done. We can go home. We wanted to try something different here today because, you know, I just want to commend Jamaica. I learned so much from her. And one of the things I learned the most from her is sometimes you got to be your own cheerleader. She was at my brokerage the other day and she was telling me, Alan, you're too humble. You need to talk about yourself more. So that's where I came up with the idea of maybe Jamaica would come up and introduce me because I really don't like to talk about stuff like that. But what we're here to talk about is negotiations today, right? So what I want you guys to do is imagine your life if you got your way more times than you didn't. What would your income be? How many vacations would you go on? Would you upgrade to suites? Would you have extra money for charity? If you can get your way more times than not, would your life be drastically different than it is today? Because where you are today is directly correlated with what you believe that you deserve and your ability to negotiate for yourself. And I've found that a lot of people have an inability to negotiate for themselves for one reason or another. One could be worthiness. Another could be they don't have the skills or the tactics to approach a negotiation tactfully and strategically. So what we're going to be going over here today is what is a negotiation and what is not a negotiation. How do we approach it? And how do we secure the negotiation and keep the deal moving forward, whatever the deal is? I'm really happy and grateful to be here today. I've been doing this for years for you guys. We got shut down for COVID. The group keeps growing and growing. And, you know, this is some material I haven't gone over in a long time, but let's go over a little bit about what negotiation is. Negotiation is life. Whether you know it or not, you negotiate on a daily basis. And for those of you that have been to my sales seminar, it doesn't matter what you do for a profession. You can be a parent. I found myself the other day negotiating with my son. He wanted to open Christmas gifts early, and we're going back and forth. And for those of you who've been to my sales seminars, the younger children are strong negotiators because that's right. We can laugh, but we know it's true because they're relentless. They don't give up and they're irrational. They don't care if they're asking for their unfair share. They will continue to ask and be persistent. And as soon as you break, they know your breaking point and they will continue to do that. So in order to be a great negotiator, you need to understand what a negotiation is and what it isn't. Negotiation is not a battle of will. Now, we all know this. We've all ran into so many real estate agents out there where this is their approach, or even other areas of our life, where it's just a battle of will through intimidation. It's not about that. Negotiation is not about being loud, abrasive, or overly aggressive. That's intimidation. That is not negotiation. How many of us have ran into that before? Someone say yes. Yes. Oh, you're good. At least I'm not the only one. Yes. I ate a Nutri-Grain bar, so I'm really like dehydrated. So negotiation is not won through intimidation. And this is often the strategy that most people use. Because we all want to be what I call an authority figure, right? That's how you get people to listen to you. You want them to know that you know what you're talking about, therefore that they will listen to you. Your position as a salesperson or a real estate agent, like highly depends on your ability to create yourself as an authority. Because for example, if you're a real estate agent and you're trying to get your clients to make the biggest purchase of their life, many of them have not done it before. Are they going to proceed with the sale if they don't perceive you as an authority figure? Someone say no. All right, I'm gonna cue you guys a little bit. So, not just that being said, but has anybody ever had a client where maybe you haven't built enough rapport, you haven't set yourself as an authority figure, and they bring along what I refer to as an influencer, and that influencer ends up becoming another decision maker. Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's an uncle, a contractor, right? And they have positioned themselves as an authority figure, and then all of a sudden they're the one controlling the client and the sale. Is that correct? We've all been through that before. All right, outstanding. That's because they position themselves as an authority figure, and that's somebody worth listening to. Oh, sorry. Let me get to the last bullet point real quick. It's what negotiation is it's a conversation where the victor is usually the one that asks the best questions, that exhibits the least amount of emotional investment into the end result, and exercises the most amount of self-control. Sometimes this is really hard to do. And we're going to go over some strategies today of how we can start to develop this and implement this into our daily life, whether it involves in real estate, with our children, whether we're giving advice to our mother who's a teacher, who's having trouble with that troubled kid in class and can't seem to get him to listen, or can't seem to get him to buy into the curriculum or whatever it is. So the first thing we're going to want to do with the negotiation is we're going to want to start positive. So we already talked about how most people use it as a brute force. They come in hot and they come in heavy. And later on in the presentation, I'm going to say out loud a couple of key canned phrases that you'll hear a lot in real estate, and everybody's going to identify with them immediately, especially if you're a new real estate agent. So if you're coming in to negotiate with me, first and foremost, I'm always coming in positive. The reason why I come in positive is because I want to align myself with my counterpart. Because I want to make sure that we're looking in the same direction rather than squaring off. Because if I'm about to square off with you, then I know it's going to be a battle. And then when it's a battle, it usually ends up the battle of the will or the battle of the ego. And people do not want to lose when you're starting a battle with them. Who here likes to lose? No, no one. That's why you guys got into real estate, right? Who later likes to win? I love to win. I know Jamaica loves to win. So I usually use key phrases like something like this, like, I'm so excited that we're about to be working together on this transaction. I've heard such great things about you. And that's usually so one thing is the negotiation starts with preparation. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. If you guys work for me, you guys know I say that very often, right? A lot of times, if I'm about to submit an offer or if I'm receiving an offer from another real estate agent, we have something called the MLS. We can look up that real estate agent, what firm they're at, how long have they been with that firm, how many transactions they've done. We can start to gather information before we start to engage in a negotiation. And we already talked about how the ability to exhibit self-control is in less emotion. Usually the way that I kind of exhibit or I understand emotion versus logic is typically the more logic I have, the less emotionally invested I am in a situation. And then as my emotion starts to go up, then disproportionately my logic starts to go down. Right? So why wouldn't we equip ourselves in a real estate transaction with as much logic as possible when the offer is presented before we even start to bring it to the negotiation table? And then when we do introduce ourselves in a positive manner. I've given I have a couple other examples because maybe you've never worked or heard of the other realtor because now there's over 22,000 realtors in the state. When I started, it was just a little over 12,000. So the percentage chance that you know somebody is much lower. So you could say something like, I've looked up your track record. And it seems like you've got a lot of experience. I'm really excited to embark on this transaction together. We're aligning ourselves once again. Or I see that you've spent a lot of time and energy getting your real estate license. And I'm really excited to be one of the first one to commence a real estate sale with you. And all we're doing is we're aligning with ourselves. Now, I want to make sure that this is a little more engaging. It's not just me preaching up here. But is this the typical way that negotiations start in a co-broke relationship? Someone say it out loud with like some spirit. Because I heard it. Yeah, okay. So, all right, good. I just want to make sure that I'm not the only one, right? We've all had immediately, hey, this is Alan Stewart Jr. I'm about to punch you in the face. Verbally, obviously. If you've been hit by another realtor, call the board. Okay. So, but again, this allows us to align with our counterpart. It doesn't allow us to square off. This is an opposite approach that most like social conditioning actually teaches us. Yesterday at a team meeting, I was talking about what my beliefs are in oral tradition, right? Oral tradition is just things that are passed down from generation to generation. And I believe because a lot, especially through TV and radio stations, things like that, we believe that negotiations have to be this brute force thing, has to be this combative thing where the victor body slams the other one, steps his foot on his chest and just says, victory! But it doesn't have to be that way. How many of us have dealt with another realtor who raises their voice and tries to intimidate you on the other end? Just you? I know Jason. Oh, okay. So we have like 50% of us. Is it all of us stuff? No. When we get on the phone with them and they start raising the voice, one of the key things we're going to learn here today is how do we de-escalate the situation? Because that's a lot of what negotiation is. We just talked about how, especially a real estate transaction is a very emotional sale. People, the clients have lived in that house for years. They've measured their kids against the walls, or they've been saving for years to buy their first home. Like their emotions are very heightened, and we need to learn how to de-escalate those. But we also need to de-escalate maybe the realtor on the other side, because a lot of times, especially around this time of year, they need that extra spending money for Christmas. Maybe their pipeline is not as full as you guys, right? And that's why when I talk to the salesmen that work for me, I always talk about the top of funnel activity. I'm going to keep referring back to my last sales course. If you guys haven't been to it, it's so important to have a full pipeline, because if your pipeline is very short or small and you're only working with a couple of people, are you more emotionally attached to the end result of that one sale, or are you less? Definitely more, right? So like me, for myself in my career, I knew if I always had a fat pipeline, I can negotiate on behalf of my clients the best possible, because chances are my pipeline is much fatter than my counterparts. So I could walk away from the deal. much quicker. And if I'm willing to walk away from the deal much quicker, does that give me leverage, more leverage or less leverage? Someone say it. More. It gives me more leverage. Exactly. So, so we all know those realtors that start with intimidation. And I always want to just start, we should always start with the F word. And the F word is fairness. You know, you always want to approach a negotiation with being fair. People value fairness so much to a high degree that they would rather walk away from a deal than feel like they're getting an unfair advantage. Now, I'll give you, I think it was Princeton. I have a couple of different references where they did a monkey survey, right? Where they started to reward the monkeys. They would do a certain behavior. And then if they fulfilled the behavior in the beginning, they would hand both the monkey grapes. Grapes are nature's candy, right? So the monkeys would get super excited. Then after a while, what would happen is they started handing one monkey cucumbers and the other monkey grapes. Now the monkey that got the cucumbers went absolutely ballistic. He not only wouldn't do the exercise anymore or exhibit the behavior, he started distracting the other monkey and started trying to sabotage the other monkey. And why is that? It's because that monkey started feeling like the whole thing was unfair to him at that point. How many of us know those people in our lives that will cut off their nose despite their face? That's why we have sayings like that. Why are you going to shoot yourself in the foot? Right? That's that oral tradition that I was talking about. We have sayings in oral tradition like that. Pay close attention to those. But usually what it is people are feeling like they have been felt mistreated. They have a lack of respect due to them, or they're feeling unfair. Matter of fact, if you are an employer, one of the main reasons why employees will leave you is because they don't feel respected. They don't feel valued. They don't feel like they're being treated fair compared to other employees. And you can look that up. That is like one of the number one reasons why people leave their job. So early on, you want to introduce the idea of fairness to them. And you can do that. You can do that in several ways. You can say, you know, I don't want anyone feeling that they're being treated unfairly in this negotiation. So please stop me if that's where the direction you think this is going. You're just calling out the elephant in the room. You're being direct about it, right? And you're also insinuating, again, you're endorsing that alignment. We started with positivity. Now we're talking about fairness. Now, when I talk about fairness, does that make you want to align with me and start to agree with me a little more? 100%. Exactly. Another way that you can say it is, these are more towards the closing. So that's to start it, but to insinuate fairness towards our closing of negotiations, you could say, I only want what's fair. Or if you present an offer and you back up the reasons for that offer, you can just say, this is a fair offer, right? Because what happens is when people tend to think things are fair, they open their mind. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. I'm going to give one more reference as well, too. As I was growing one of my businesses, I had a mentor. He's an extremely intelligent man. I'm going to reference him twice in this. His name's Scott. And Scott, so not only do I have to negotiate, sales and with my son and then with, endless things. A lot of what I have to do is when I onboard agents, we have to negotiate commissions and value structures and things like that, right? And I'll never forget the advice that Scott gave me. Scott said, you can never make the deal too fair for yourself. Because as soon as you do that, the other party feels like it's unfair and they're more likely to leave sooner rather than later. That being said, I got Tommy Miles. He's on my team right here. And Tommy, the other day, he was negotiating out a deal. Tommy's new to real estate, but he's been closing a fair amount of transactions. So good for him. Good way to go, Tommy. There you go. We're going to make this a little bit interactive right quick. So Tommy, you called me the other day and you were talking about one of the negotiations that you're having on maybe your fifth or sixth sale or something like that, right?
Correct.
So why don't you tell us really quickly about that?
Well, we found multiple things found in the inspection, and I gave you a call and asked for some advice on how to present that to the other realtor. And we walked through it, and I wanted this certain amount of dollar through it, and the conversation went well. He presented it to his client, and the client, although he didn't like it, I was still able to keep the good relationship with the other realtor through the transaction, and we are still continuing through that transaction.
Okay, so we held the transaction together, right? So and the key component was he said the other client did not like it, right? So liking something and perceiving it as fair are two totally different things. So that's a differentiator that we definitely need to make up. Now, before Tommy called me, Tommy, what you don't know about Tommy is Tommy's like a state champion wrestler from when he was younger, right? So Tommy loves to pin people to the ground and pummel their face in, right? So that was initially the direction that Tommy was going to come, you know, and I'm all too familiar with this. I mean, and I identified with it immediately because when I first started in real estate, like I love to pin other realtors to the ground and just pummel their face in and just get, and I'm talking obviously theoretically speaking. So what I'm saying is like, I believe that it was my fiduciary duty to get my clients their unfair advantage, right? So, and it's so much to the point where I would just bulldoze these other real estate agents going over what we were talking there. And one of the things I said to Tommy, I says, Tommy, like you can't bulldoze this person. You can't pin them to the ground and pummel them in the face. And Tommy says, but I love doing that. And I said, no, I do too. But we want to, while I'm talking about fairness, you want to take into consideration that 96% of real estate transactions are co-broke relationships. And 90% of the transactions are done by 10% of the real estate agents. How many of us want to be in that 10% of real estate agents? Everybody in the room raises their hand. So if you want to, or you are destined to be in that 10%, what is the probability that you will repeat that co-broke relationship with that realtor or another realtor in that office? Very high. Very high. So if that realtor feels like you're treating them unfairly or leveraging information in a manner in which it's taking advantage of them, do you think that they are more susceptible or less susceptible of taking your phone call, presenting your offer as strongly as possible, or talking good to you about another realtor that you could potentially co-broke in the future? Less presentable. See, I think that a lot of, like we talked about in the sales seminar, a lot of us, we stop at the closing table. And it doesn't just stop with this one client, right? We do want to perform our fiduciary duties on behalf of our clients, but we also want to make sure that we understand that part of that fiduciary duty is being fair with the other party, because you're also representing your fiduciary duty to the clients that you don't even know that you have in the future. Does that kind of make sense? The reason why I'm doing this is a process called framing. I'm future-cating you guys. I'm allowing you to understand that the sale doesn't stop with this one individual. And I'm kind of framing that so you guys have a great career and not a great sale. A great career and not a great year. A lot of people think that they're great, they have a great career just because they had a good year last year. It's not about a good year last year. It's about multiple good years in a row. And fairness is how you get to multiple good years in a row. All right, outstanding. So what we're going to do is we're going to explain our objectives in the beginning too. This allows us to be more direct. And I'm going to just read off this real quick, and I'm going to break down the sentence really quickly. We're going to analyze the sentence. So our intention is to be fair. And in order to do so, I need to understand your client's needs so I can go back to Tommy and Candace to attempt to fulfill them. So what I'm doing real quick is I'm starting with the word R. You want to stay away from the word I, because R insinuates alignment right there, right? And the first, we're coming in positive. Second is we're aligning with the person because we're more likely to work together to a successful transaction. And you want to understand, right? So understand is endorsing that fairness right there. You're entering with a mindset of discovery. And then we talk about your clients, right? Now, and then you'll notice I mentioned your clients' needs, but then I named my clients. Now, there are different strategies on this really quickly. We've already talked about how heightened emotions is what stops and starts like a negotiation, right? Now, what I'm doing when I'm referring to the other client, other party's client a lot of time is I'm not naming them by name because I'm dehumanizing that side of it. And then I'm naming my clients by name. It's a simple empathy tactic. So that way I can start to empathize that there are human beings on this side of the transaction. Now, sometimes intentionally, what I will do, I'll always know their clients' names, because it's written on the contract, or I can go to the tax records, right? Or if it's an LLC, I'll go out of my way to find that, because there are times where you want to exempt or implement tactical empathy, which we'll go over in a little bit, where you do want to drop people's names. Because when you drop people's names, it humanizes everything. And once again, we're in a relationship-driven business. The stronger relationships that you have, the more powerful and the stronger career you're going to have. So we talk about fulfill. So when I'm talking about fulfill them, for example, I think you can get misconstrued with what this means. This isn't what they want, but we're going to go into why they want it. Because anybody that engages with me on a very often basis, I always talk about the why. The why is the most important thing, because the why is the gas that gets us up in the morning. Every year around this time of year, for those of us that went to the last RAMP program, Kelly McGinnis presented this amazing program about goal setting, right? So who of us were there? Okay, well, it was amazing. Thank you for attending. And she always talks about preparing for next year. Set your goals, this, that, and that. But if you don't have a why to get you from here to the now, to where you want to be, then you won't actually have the gas in your car to get to your destination. And it's the same thing when we're negotiating. We want to understand the why for our client to keep them moving forward, but also the why for our counterparts clients as well. And that's what we're trying to fulfill, right? Because I understand that they're trying to sell their house, but what is the reason they're trying to sell it, right? So a lot of people don't do things like this. They just walk in and they blind themselves, right? And they don't enter into a negotiation with what I call a mindset of discovery. And what I mean by that is a lot of people are so fixated on their end result and what they want that they're blinded. You ever seen a horse that they walk around in the city and they always have those blinders on right here? I feel bad for them. But the reason why they do that is because there's too much stimulation and they just want them looking forward. So that way they keep moving towards the steered destination. If I turn him right, he only sees right. If I turn him left, he only sees left. There's nothing that can spook him with many of the distractions, right? We don't want to do that in negotiations. We want to open ourselves with a mindset of discovery because we want to start to, again, understand what are the motives of my clients, what are the motives of their clients. And a lot of people, the reason why we do this is because once you understand that most people think they know what they want, but really don't. How many can agree with that? Huh. I mean, and I can't even be biased. Like so many areas of my life, I think I know what I want, but then like when I get it, I'm like, was that really what I wanted? How many of us have won, but you feel like you lost, right? How many of us ever won? They have, again, oral tradition. Oh, you won the battle, but you lost the war. How many of us wanted something different when we were 20 years old? And then that changes, right? And that changes, right? How many of us has wanted one thing one day and then the next day it's something totally different? So we've already come to the conclusion that people, at least in America, have the right to change their mind at any given time without any prior notice, right? And you have that right to persuade people to change their mind at any given time without any prior notice. But you can't do that without a mindset of discovery because often a lot of people don't know what they want. And what they really want is they just want to feel heard, respected, and validated, right? That's what they want. They don't necessarily want the end result. They just want you to understand why they wanted it. How many of us have ever wanted something, gotten less of it, and still been okay with the end result? I mean, me, I know I got a 6-year-old, and from what I understand, when he turns around 8, he's going to stop holding my hand all the time. And I'll probably settle for like a little hug 50% of the time, right? It's not what I want, but I'll definitely, I'll feel validated. I'll feel respected. I'll feel, empowered. I'll feel like an authority figure. I'll feel like it will fulfill me. So we need to open up, we don't want to blind ourselves and open with a mindset of discovery. And we want to walk, but how? Okay, so how do we do this? So we want to open up with active listening. So any of us that are in my sales class, does anybody really remember what active listening is? That's okay. That's why we're here. Socrates says learning is recalling. So I feel like a lot of people, once again, they enter into a negotiation and what ends up happening is they're bullying their way. They're so fixated on what they want or what their clients want that they're just pushing through and they never take the time to stop and actually listen to the counterpart. How many of us heard the saying that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth? Right? Yeah, exactly. So what we can do is we can practice what's called active listening. And there's a couple of steps in which we can do this.
we need to take some time to slow it down. We're going to break this down a little bit more in a second. We want to take some time to mirror, to align ourselves even more with our counterpart. And then also we're going to want to be silent. And I feel like great salespeople, a lot of times we have a really hard time with silence. And these are things that you can practice for yourself, sitting in silence, doing things like that, right? And I usually open, when I'm trying to participate in active listening, I open with a question. And the question starts the same way every single time. And it starts with, what's most important to you in? What's most important to you in a buyer's agent? What's most important to you in a listing agent? What's most important to you in a brokerage? What's most important to you in an inspection, in your inspection requests? What's most important to your clients out of the inspection request that you sent over? And all I do is I open up that question and I'm allowing them to, again, start their conversation. And then I can start to participate in what's called active listening. And the first thing I need to do is I need to slow it down. I need to make sure that my counterpart feels heard and that they're feeling important through that. You know, we need to take our time. I feel like a lot of times we're so attached to that end result that we rush the negotiation processes because we just want to get an answer. It doesn't matter what the answer is. And we just want to get to the closing. Do we kind of agree?
Yeah.
Does anybody have an example of that anytime recently?
I think some of that comes out of insecurities too.
Mm-hmm.
People that don't want to have to go and research answers. Other agents, sometimes they'll come in very aggressively.
Yep.
Because they're shutting you down, like I'm authority. She's never going to ask you X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, through intimidation, right? Because if I intimidate you, especially with like a very big personality, then I'm not approachable. And if I'm not approachable, you're intimidated to the point where you want to ask me more questions, right? If you don't ask me more questions, then you can't have discovery. And if you can't have discovery, then I'm more likely to, the mindset is I'm more likely to get my ideas across.
And I think the backdrop is always your natural preference and personality. So if you're more extroverted, you're more likely to do certain things. If you're more introverted, so the key is to go out of your comfort zone in such situation.
Yeah, exactly. And in order to do that, we need to be aware. We need to be aware and observant, right? And we're going to talk about being observant through the next slide, which is called mirroring, right? Thank you, Flora, for getting ahead of me. But so you need your so you want your counterpart to feel heard. You know, you don't want to listen to respond, and this was in my sales courses as well. And I'm going to again keep referring back to those because we're in the negotiation part. If you remember in the sales courses, we were talking about how a sale is broken down to 3 key components. There's the open, there's the selling, and then there's the closing. Would we all be in agreement that some people are incredible openers? They can walk and they can talk with anybody, start a conversation with anybody, almost envious. They can work a networking room like no one else, right? But they can't get the appointment. And they can't turn that networking event into a one-on-one appointment where they're start selling, start listening and informing the person. And then the worst thing that most people are the part of the sale that most people are worst at is the closing. How do we put ink to paper? Negotiations more on like the second half of that sales arch that I'm talking about, right? How do we start to establish needs and start to close people and get them committed, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to take your time. Most people are in a rush because they're fixated on the end result. On the buyer side, a good way to prepare yourself for taking time, for example, is if you, what stage of the contract, I know we mostly have realtors here. What stage of the contract do you tend to negotiate the most? The inspection contingency period. So a good way that you can practice and slow it down is on behalf of your client is when your offer gets accepted, have an inspection done as quickly as possible, because then you've elongated the possible negotiation process. You've given yourself more time because the person who is rushing is usually the person emotionally invested, and that's usually the person that gives in the quickest, right? Again, that gentleman, Scott, that I was talking about, this guy is a master negotiator. I mean, he's got me where I've walked. I believe I agreed to that. This is ridiculous. Yeah, I thought I was good, and this guy got me. And he like never talks. He just sits there. Oh, okay. And he just lets me go on and on and on. And I had to learn the hard way a couple of different times. No wonder he's where he is and I am where I am. So, you know, in order to do this, you must be on the phone, right? For example, we're talking about the inspection contingency period. This is just like a quick tidbit. I know that like a lot of realtors love to send emails or hide behind text messages, but this is not the way that we do business. We're in a co-broke relationship. We're in an emotional sale, emotionally driven sale. We're an emotionally driven sale. The best way to transfer those emotions is get on the phone. And we're going to talk about why that's so much more powerful. How many of us had other real estate agents, like, sure, once in order to get the offer accepted, maybe they'll talk to you on the phone. And then as soon as the offer is accepted, there is no more phone conversations.
Yes.
There is only text messages.
Yeah.
And those are few far in between as well. And I'm not like putting down my brethren. I'm just trying to say to you guys that, this is not the appropriate way to best represent your clients. You want to make sure you get on the phone. Bring it a little old school, because you can't exhibit a lot of this right here with like slowing it down, mirroring, unless you're on the phone. Because a lot of communication is not just what is being said, it's how it's being said, right? Exactly. So the art of mirroring is the art of mimicking another to build a bond with them, right? And the reason why we want to build a bond with our counterpart is because if I was to build a bond with you or anybody on Zoom, are you more inclined to listen to me and approach? And on top of that, I've approached you with positivity, a mindset of fairness, and a mindset of discovery. Are you more open to doing the same, reciprocating it to me?
Yeah.
Did someone say yes on Zoom? Don't get me too excited right now.
Yes, I did.
Oh, I know that voice. That's twice.
I still did.
Oh my God, everyone knows Toya. But so we've already kind of entered into So we've already talked about how we're entering into a negotiation. Now, this is some things that we can do to continue on with that rapport that we're building, because we haven't even started negotiating yet. This is all preparation leading up to it. I often tell, and for those of us that are listing agents, does the listing presentation start at the kitchen table? No. Well, it doesn't. Tom, what's something that you do when you call to set the appointment before you even go to the property?
Ask what the timeline looks like.
What their timeline looks like.
House looks like.
Yeah. What else do you ask for from them that maybe someone else is there?
Sorry.
Someone else. What else are you asking for? You're ensuring that something else is happening, so you don't go there and waste your time. Are you talking with anyone else? Are there any other decision makers? Have you interviewed any other realtors? It starts way before you're actually doing it. It's the same thing with negotiations. Before you start negotiating, it starts extremely before it. For me, negotiation starts at the time of the showing request. If I have time, I love showtime. But if I have time, I'm reaching out to that realtor, especially if my client is highly interested in the property. And I really try to text message all the realtors that show my listings. We know sometimes that's next to impossible, especially if you have a very aggressively priced listing and things like that. So what we're going to talk about is mirroring, right? So we do that through our tone. We talked about this in the sales task, keeping a calm tone, a positive tone, but also being a direct and assertive at the same time, because we want to continue to establish ourselves as an authority figure. We do this through our words. Words are not just about like what we speak, but like how we say it, and how we say it is through the tone. But we also want to do it when they're saying things to us. We want to make sure that we're repeating back to them what they're saying. It's just to let them know that we're listening to them. Repeating back the 2 to 3 last words of the sentence that they said to them, because then they feel heard. Then they feel like you're being fair to them. And then we do it through a process called labeling that I'll go into more detail, in significant detail on further slides, right? And then the last thing is, if we're in person, we talked about this in the last course, you want to start to mirror them as well. You want to pay close attention to their facial expressions, their body language, and their position of their posture, things of that. And you want to start to meet them where they're at. And then after you're mirroring with them, you want to make sure that you're being silent, right? So you want to remember to take pause after you're repeating back what they said to them, because at this point, your counterpart will more likely go into more depth. And if you want to negotiate your best life, you got to have more information. The more information you have, the more probability that you'll get your way. But if you're the one talking all the time, you're not getting information, you are giving information. Information is the new currency.
That's it.
And big tech companies have proven this. Why do you think that all your apps, the ones that you use the most, are free? Because they are collecting your data, your information. They don't even need to talk to you. They understand this on a great scale. Now, although we are not servicing millions or if not billions of people at once, we're in a very hyper local business. We don't need that to live a great life, but we do need the ability to collect information. And you cannot collect information unless you're being silent. What's that saying about your ears and your mouth again? 2 ears, 1 mouth. So we do that through being silent. So let's do a little recap really quickly. And then what do we got for time?
12:15.
12:50. All right, awesome. So I think we're going to 1. So I'm gonna power through a couple more, but I want you guys to so a lot of this point, what we're doing here today is not just a conjunction of the RAMP program, but it's also part of your professional network. It's an organization that I started a long time ago. And the whole point of that is to network, right? So I'd love it if you guys got up and just talked to some people really quickly, because your network is your net worth. Exactly, right? So we're here to meet each other, right? So let's do a really quick recap. You don't want to walk into negotiations with assumptions. You want to wipe those clear. Because if you have assumptions, then you're closing off your mind. You're walking with blinders and there's no mindset of discovery. You want to slow down. You don't want to respond. You don't want to listen just to respond. You want to listen to actually listen. Hear what your counterpart's thinking, and you want to ensure that you're listening through active listening by repeating back to them what they're saying, right? And then you want to be silent. You want to make sure you're taking pause so that way they can start to elaborate a little bit more on what it is that they're saying. Let's go through a couple more slides really quickly. So understanding and feeling, understanding the feeling and mindset of what's behind. Oh, excuse me. All right, here, let me do this now. So recognizing where they're coming from the feelings, and vocalizing and the recognition so they feel understood. We've already talked about how this sale, pretty much any sale, usually emotion trumps logic. And a lot of purchases, they are logistical, but a lot of them are motivated by feelings. How many of us have big feelings in their life? I know sometimes I have such big feelings. And then as soon as my feelings start to escalate, I can't think rationally, right? So what we can do is we can practice a term that's called tactical empathy. And what we can do is we can focus on those feelings on the other side so that they feel understood. And the more that they feel understood and listened to, the more you can start to establish their belief system. And once you can establish their belief system, you can start to motivate them and steer them in the direction that you'd like to do. So you could do this through mirroring, focusing on their facial expressions, their body language, their tone, their choice of words, right? So for example, another Princeton University study recognized that there's a neural reasoning that disappears when someone feels like they haven't been felt like they're understood. So what I mean by that is researchers could predict basically when people are aligning themselves through mirroring, paying attention to facial expressions, body language, things like that. When people are starting to align together, you can start to finish each other's sentences and things like that. Has anybody ever had that happen where you're starting to you're really vibing with a person? Maybe it's a first date, maybe it's somebody that you've known for a very long time, and you have such a good strong flow with them. You can almost predict what they're going to say next, even though you haven't had that conversation. This is a real life thing, because you can start to understand who they are and why they are that way, right? And we want to make sure that we're able to do that through the negotiation process very quickly, even if we haven't met these people yet, right? I can't even read my own handwriting.
Sounds about right.
Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about is, in order to do this, which Tommy was talking about earlier, is you don't have to share the feeling with them. Meaning you don't have to have the same belief system. You don't have to believe what they're saying is true, but just feeling like that they are understood is good enough in order to align yourself with that person. And we do, how do we do this? We do this through a process called labeling, and emotionally charged discussions can be very intense, especially when the emotion is anger. So we were talking about having big emotions before. You know, there are many different types of emotions that we can have. We can be upset, we could be fearful, we can be remorseful, right? But for people that are emotionally unintelligent, typically, how do they tend to present themselves? With angry, right? Because in order to understand what those underlying emotions are, you really have to dig deep down inside. And unfortunately, a lot of us are very busy and we don't take the time to do that. So by us being observant and being open with a mindset of discovery, and if we can be extremely observant and start to label these types of emotions, we can really start to pull out of the other party exactly what's going on. And once we know what's going on with them, we can understand their motivation and we can start to steer their motivation. Does that kind of make sense? All right, awesome, outstanding. So, all right, I'm going to give a couple of examples now, actually, of when this doesn't happen. So, a couple of examples. Has anybody ever had a real estate conversation with another real estate agent, and they've heard sayings like, "I've been doing this for 20 years." Yep. Right. Now, is that in alignment with you, or is that them squaring off with you and belittling you? Yeah. How does that make you feel when another person says that to you?
If you're a jerk.
Yeah. You don't know what you do. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I have actually found the majority of realtors that say that have been doing one transaction for 20 years straight. So it doesn't necessarily, time doesn't equate to experience, right? Another thing would be like, another example I would say is when people say you have no control over your client. Has anybody ever heard that one? Get some control over your client. No one's ever heard that one? Oh, wow. All right. Do more transactions. I know you've heard that one. I've definitely heard that before. It's like more like when you present a long inspection list, right? And it's like, how dare you present this to me? You need to get more control over your client. You know? Those are coming from a place of anger, right? And really usually, again, what's underneath the anger is a different type of emotion, whether it's fear, it's feeling unfair, things like that. So we're going to break this down to a couple of steps of labeling. We're going to detect what their true emotional state is, right? What we're going to do in step 2 is we're going to pay close attention to their emotional state and how it changes when exterior events come in. Now, usually in a negotiation, that exterior event is your words. So when you implement your words into a conversation, typically it changes the direction of the conversation is going, or it continues going in that direction. So you want to pay close attention and be observant as to what's happening on the other side. And you can do that again through listening to their tone. If you're in person, their body language, or the smallest component of it is what actually is being said. And then step number 3 is you want to highlight that emotional state out loud and refrain from using the word I. So for example, these are some highlights that we can do to start to label the process of the emotional state. So it sounds like you're frustrated because this is the 3rd time you've potentially had to go back to the market with this listing because we're not coming to terms on this inspection contingency process, right? It seems like your client feels hopeless, right? Or it seems like you feel hopeless, right? Or from what I understand, and if you guys refer back to the sales training, like what you want to do is you want to listen to the verbiage that they use. And usually what I try to do is I try to label and mirror what verbiage they're using. Because we already established in the last class that a lot of people speak in terms of the way that they feel, think, or see things, right? Some people are incredible thinkers, and I think this, I think that usually those are very analytical people. They have jobs like being an accountant, something with numbers, things along that nature. The feelers, those are highly empathetic people. They're usually salespeople. They build connections really quickly. And then some people just see things. These are usually leaders, visionaries. They look into the future, right? So we want to start to be able to label it to them, and we want to repeat that back, what that statement is, because usually when we do that, what it does is it triggers a response for them. And when they trigger a response, what are you going to do? We already talked about it. You're going to be silent. You're going to let them talk, right? Because there's such thing called negotiating against yourself, right? If you give up too much information, you typically start to negotiate against yourself. And we're going to teach you guys, how do we get people to negotiate against themselves, right? Because if you're willing to do all the work, why am I going to do all the heavy lifting right now, right? So by labeling, it allows my counterpart to still feel like they're in control. Because best case scenario, what I'm doing is by labeling the way that they're feeling or the way that they're interpreting the information, they can either agree with me or they can correct me. Does that kind of make sense? There's only two directions. If I try to establish with you and say, it sounds like what you're saying is that you no longer, you've lost hope with this sale, right? You can say, no, that's not what I'm saying, right? And then they'll start to trigger a response, and then I can active listen. It also, but what it allows me to do, it allows me to backtrack as well, because I often, have we ever heard some information or someone said something to us and we interpreted it one way, but really they meant it another way? Yeah, exactly. And we've already established that we want to align ourselves. We want to fully understand what the other person's saying. So if I repeat it back to them and I label the emotion behind it, they can disagree with me. And then all of a sudden I'm equipped with more information and I understand exactly what it is they're saying to me. And they've endorsed that what I'm thinking and feeling is correct, right? Because then I can't continue to move forward, because have you ever been given the wrong information and you proceeded to move forward with the wrong information, thinking you're doing a great job? And you're like, oh my God, I wish you told me that you weren't an American citizen before we got you pre-qualified in 2 days before the closing table, and we can no longer grant you a loan, right? Sounds a little personal, right? But like we want to make sure that we have the right information, because you can't negotiate accurately unless you're getting the right information. Once you've labeled the emotion, you want to refrain from continuing to speak. Again, I want to emphasize this so much. Like, we often out-talk ourselves out of things. And this is when people start to negotiate against themselves. Because if you speak long enough, you will start to compromise more. And if you speak less, typically you will compromise less, right? Typically letting people feel heard also allows them to start to de-escalate themselves. So for example, if a realtor is coming at me with a lot of anger, and I'll just directly talk to them and say, it sounds like you're really angry right now, and perhaps we should have this conversation at another time. Like, just being completely direct. A lot of times they will start to de-escalate. Well, no, I'm not angry. I'm just frustrated because of this, this, and this. And then they vented. And once they vented, now we can start to open up to a real conversation. So we do this by with asking questions with an inquisitive tone. And we talked about this in the last class, like swinging up the tone at the end of the sentence. We all know about tonality, or we've learned it. We know how powerful it could be. And this gives them also, we've already talked about this giving them an out, because if you are incorrect with labeling, it allows them to repeat themselves, and then you can continue the process with labeling again. Labeling, it diffuses negative emotions and it reinforces positive emotions. So that's exactly what we're trying to do. Is like, if people are coming at us with negative emotion, we're trying to de-escalate that, right? And we're then trying to futuricate them or lead them into a more positive direction, because all of us move away from negative reinforcement and towards positive reinforcement. Is that pretty fair? I mean, how many of us, most of us are employed by ourselves, correct? What's one of the reasons why we're employed by ourselves? Because we don't like bosses. That's literally the answer I was looking for. I ask people, I've actually asked thousands of realtors, why do you become a realtor? One of them is financial freedom. The other is freedom of schedule. They want to do what they want, when they want, they want to work with who they want. So we also, and what they're really saying is like, I don't like authority. I don't like to be told what to do. It's the same thing when the negotiation. If you start telling people this is what you need to do, because I've been doing this for 20 years and you have no control over your clients, so you must listen to me. What does that do?
Devaluates you who I am.
Exactly. You know, yesterday when we were at a team meeting, you know, I was, why are you pushing me? Like, right? You're at TV, we're doing this exercise. You're doing it too. What's going on with this? Oh, he's strong, this guy. Look at this right here. So, but what I'm saying is that, like, if when I come at people like that, so are they more likely to push back at me or are they less likely to push back at me? We just proved that I didn't even tell them what I was doing. I just started walking up to them and every single one of them, some of them harder than others. And that's usually the type of person that they are, right? But they started pushing back. I didn't even have to say, hey, I'm going to push up against you, right? Yesterday, actually, when we did it at our team, one of my realtors just went right up for a high five. And that was a personality trait right there. He was entering with a positive state. He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So we're gonna do this by entering in a non-judgmental way. You can cut them off by excuse me. You can cut off the situation by doing this by what I mean by, like, you can predict if people are in a negative emotional state, right? And you can cut off this situation by talking about that before it actually even happens. And what we're going to talk about is, again, identifying placing yourself in their position and how you would feel if you were in that position. I once read this book and they were talking about an angry old man, and he lives at a retirement facility. He doesn't see his family that much. And then every event they would pull him out of the retirement facility and he would go to his family events. And he only gets to see him once or twice a year, but he was this angry old man every single time. And one of the youngest people of the family, they would approach this old man, and rather than treating him the way that everybody else did and identifying, saying, you're so angry, why are you so grumpy? Like, I guess when you get old, that's the way you get, right? They would sit down with him and they'd say, hey, no, I completely understand. You must feel pretty lonely right now because you only get to see us twice a year. And then all of a sudden that angry old man started opening up to that person, and then the holidays got better, right? Because they were practicing tactical empathy, and they were also labeling his emotions right there, because he was resenting anger, but he really wasn't angry. He was lonely. He was feeling insecure. He was feeling unappreciated, right? So we want to start to be able to identify those things. We identify those things through active listening, paying attention more, listening more than speaking. And then once we've listened more, we start to label them and identify those. And if we're wrong, allow them, be silent again, allow them to correct themselves. Is all this kind of making sense in a procedural manner, right? It's a strategic way to go about it. So once you've been able to label the emotion, then you can start to do what I call future gating, right? And future gating is it's turning a negative emotion into a positive emotion, right? It's painting a positive outcome towards the future. So you can start to predict or paint out positive solutions from where we're at right now. At this point, we're going to be working towards a commitment. We're going to start talking about, because once you start to future-gate and people start to agree with you, you start working towards a yes. Then we're going to talk about reaching a commitment. So we do this by talking about worst case scenarios and best case scenarios, right? And this is just being direct. I feel like a lot of people are very scared to be direct. You know, we're afraid of the word no, and we're afraid of what the end result could be. And what the end result is really, you know, in our mind, we either tend to lean really towards the best case scenario or really towards the worst case scenario. And if we start to just throw these things on the table during a negotiation, then it's kind of understood right here. And then, so for example, worst case scenario, if we don't come to terms, we can end this transaction. And if we end this transaction, you'll be showing the buyer houses for another 3 months, which I know would have me feel incredibly frustrated, because I know how hard you've worked to get to this point. Best case scenario, we can work together, try to find a fair resolution. And if we do that, we can actually meet the closing date, or I can potentially try to see if the sellers can move it up. And that way you can move on with your life. Now, I was literally leveraging just the realtor's position, but you also want to collect the information about their client as well, because once you understand their why, you can start to be direct and paint worst case and best case scenarios, right? Because, and then obviously what you want to do is, well, not obviously, but well, usually when I'm talking about worst case scenario, I'm swinging my tone a little more down, right? Because it's insinuating doom. It's insinuating like, hey, this is not the direction we want to go. Best case scenario is, right? And that's how we complement tonality into our being direct with people. And then just to be sure, or actually, why don't we take a second break real quick? Because I want you guys to meet each other. So why don't we take a couple minutes, because we don't usually do this, but I want you guys to like talk to each other, because I know I get super kind of transparent. So. No one wants to meet each other. No? Take a bathroom break, or you can ask questions right now.
Hello, my name is Toya and I'm from Yellow Brick, and it's nice to meet everybody. I wasn't able to come in person, but I'm here on Zoom. Hey. I was supposed to say hi, Toya.
Sorry about that. Toya, I heard you out there.
Okay.
I know it's hard to network on Zoom. It's more of like a lecture experience. Next
That's
time I hope to
cool.
see you guys in person.
We got one person.
Hey, Toya.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah.
Hey, Brandon.
How are you? We'll network together.
I am awesome. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding.
For those of us that
I had to zoom in too, so.
you guys can grab it now if you want.
Candace is here too. Hi, guys.
Hi, Candace.
Hey, Candace.
Candace, thank you for sending me the link.
Hallway.
Getting some people saying hi on the chat link, which is awesome. Brandon, make sure you tell the missus I said hello.
I will. We use your saying all the time now, happy spouse, happy house.
Love that.
Facts. That's how you do it. That's how you survive it.
I always happy wife, happy life.
That's what you want to say, but if you both ain't happy, then it ain't gonna work out. So it's happy spouse, happy house.
I love that.
Exactly. Both parties got to be happy. Ever since you told us that at that little networking event, we've been using it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Don't just use it, live by it, because it's the truth.
Oh no, we live by it now. And tell your husband thank you for that quote. We close on the 20th, so hopefully they'll use them.
Oh, okay, awesome. I'll let him know when he comes back from vacation.
What does your husband do, Toya?
He does HVAC and plumbing.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, so if you Need one. He's all over in the New Haven and Fairfield County also too. He goes up.
We just bought a house, so maybe I'll use them.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So that it's created. Dude, it's a process, so you need to sit down and if you're not watching it, you need to listen. While you're doing something, and be like, all right, does this make sense? When you listen back to yourself, it's gonna be like from here.
No, I just want to, I don't saying, hey, well, I'm gonna read through it and do a recap. All right, guys, we're gonna get started up. Yo, Jason, can you grab the thing away so someone else sit down? Yeah, there it is. All right, guys, if you could take a seat. All right. It sounds like you guys are really excited to network with each other. I know I love to network as well. We have about like 15 to 20 minutes left. And because we opened it up to the networking, we had the introductory, you know, the probability that we'll get through everything is probably pretty low. So we'll do a quick little recap of what we've learned so far. You want to start by clearing your assumptions. You know, you want to try to make sure that you're not assuming things of where your counterpart's coming from, because that closes you off. It enters you with blinders. You want to make sure that you're listening. You're listening with a mindset of intensity to learn. You want to learn where your counterpart's coming from. You want to ensure to them that you're learning by repeating the last 3 words to them. That's the last 3 words in every sentence that they're saying. Once you've done that, you want to start to label the emotion and where they're coming from. So this way you can establish if you're correct or not, exactly where they're coming from, because then you'll have something to work with. You want to make sure that you're being direct, right? By being direct on the last slide, what I was talking about is you want to just make statements like, you know, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that you want this to be fair and that we're both working towards a closing right now, right? So making statements such as those, right? And then you also, lastly, you want to ask more questions and offer better solutions. Or what we're going to learn is ask them to offer better solutions if the solutions that you're making are being rejected. This takes courage. You're always looking to get to the word no. We talked about the negotiation starts way before the negotiation actually even starts. Negotiations start at the word no. However, society conditions us to be afraid of the word no. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of strategies that I use, because I used to be very afraid of the word no. I would avoid it at all costs. Now, if you want to be a great salesperson, do you have to get used to the word no or not used to the word no?
Yes.
So a strategy that I did is I would ask outlandish questions everywhere I went with the assumption that I was going to be told no. For example, if I was at a restaurant, I would ask them if I can go back, meet the chef, and cook my own meal.
Another example, if I was checking out at a retail store, I would ask, can I have the employee discount? And I would just start to position myself in a position where people would say no. Because best case scenario, I get an experience, or I get a discount, I get to meet the chef, I get to learn something. Worst case scenario, I've been told no, my ego's bruised a little bit, but I'm building a callus around that word no. So that's something that you can implement almost immediately when you leave here today. Start looking for opportunities and asking outlandish questions where you can be told no. Because if you remember, 6-year-olds, 5-year-olds, they don't care if you say no. They are not afraid of that word because life has not beaten them in the face enough to fear it. So we need to recondition ourselves to not be scared of that. No starts the negotiation. It also gives your counterpart a sense of control. Right? It also protects them from unwanted change. So if they're really stubborn on where they're standing, by allowing them to say no, they're feeling more protected, they're feeling more controlled and secure. It also allows you to start the labeling process. So from what it sounds like, you're saying no. And if I was in your position, you saying no is, and then you would start to label, is because the emotion, right? So what you want to do is, if you do get a yes, you don't want to push for yes. There are 3 different types of yeses that you can get. And you want to be able to identify what types of yeses that you're getting. How many of us ever get a soliciting call on the phone real quick, right? And they're like, hey, this is Alan Stewart Jr. from Washington. I'm talking about the Kirby vacuums. I wanted to know, if I could stop by your house, or if you take a Zoom call so I can sell you more internet leads or something. What's your initial reaction? Some people say no, but a lot of people don't want to say no, and they just say yes, and that's a counterfeit yes. And they say, yeah, sure, I'm interested. I'm just not free right now. Meanwhile, you're just driving to your next appointment. You're totally free. And you're saying, call me back Thursday at 4.
Yep.
Do you have intention of picking the phone up at Thursday at 4? No. You're screening that call, and they've gotten smart. They're starting to call you from 203, 860 numbers, all that type of stuff, right? It's to the point where a realtor used to pick up every call that comes in, and you're scared to pick up any call because you're giving out counterfeit yeses, So we need to understand and make sure that we identify a counterfeit yes. The next stage up from a counterfeit yes is a confirmation. A lot of these are reflexive as well. Like they'll just say, so there's the counterfeit yes where you say yes and you have no intention of fulfilling it. The confirmational yes is like, hey, yeah, no, I can do that. But then like when the time really comes, they don't do it. That's why like whenever you throw a past client event or something like that, and you get 100 people to register, only 60 show up. It's a 60% show up ratio. At the point of yes, they have every intention of showing up. However, things change from now until then, right? And then the last one is a commitment. And we're going to learn, how do you get a commitment? And you always want commitments at a point of negotiation, right? So how to tell, the rule of 3, this is how you get a commitment. You get them to say yes on 3 different occasions. It's much like labeling, right? Because you want to get that confirmation of that yes in 3 different ways. So it sounds like we've worked out a solution. And then they usually say yes, So what you're saying is we've come to an agreement. And then lastly, okay, I understand we'll be moving forward with, right? So a true commitment, there's a difference between you're right and that's right. Pay very close attention when you're coaching people or talking to people or trying to negotiate with someone. If they start saying you're right, what does that insinuate right there? It insinuates that they're still in a combative state and squaring off with you because they're looking directly at you and they're saying you're right. And you're not both turned in the same direction, pointing at the same issue and a situation saying that's right. It's 2 totally different. If you're hearing you're right, they're not listening and they're politely just shrugging you off. They're not aligned with you. You're not both looking at the situation and working out a solution. You're still looking at each other because when I say you're right, it infers that we are different from each other. We're not aligned, right? So how are we going to work towards a yes? Yes, but how? Yes without a how is no commitment at all. It is the non-committed yes. And what I mean by that is you want confirmation of what the next logical steps are. So it sounds like we've come to an agreement, right? And so when we get off the phone, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna type the addendum. I'm gonna send it to my buyers. They're gonna sign it. I'll send it over to you. If we can get it back within the next 24 hours, then what I can do is go ahead and order the appraisal right away. Because I don't want to order my client's appraisal and spend $750 or $500 on that unless we have some type of commitment here. Does that sound correct? Right? So we're starting to spell out the next stages. So next time you're negotiating with someone and they give you a yes, make sure you spell out the next stages. Otherwise, they're just shrugging you off. So if you're being ignored by someone, how many of us have ever, entered into a negotiation, the other person like ghosts us because maybe they're afraid, right? Or you've started to tell them no. And the easiest thing for us to do is to ghost people rather than address that word that we fear, which is no. So what you want to do is you want to start triggering a no. And a very easy way to do this is, have you given up on this, right? Now, you'll notice here I have transaction, home search, sale, moving to Florida, right? Which one of these is probably the best to say, have you given up on this transaction? Have you given up on this home search? Have you given up on this sale? Have you given up on moving to Florida? Just anybody scream one out. Moving to Florida. Moving to Florida.
No, I haven't given up on moving to Florida.
Oh, there we go. So yes, the one is the moving to Florida. And why is that? The reason why is because this is the why. This is the motivation behind the sale, behind the home search, behind the transaction. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, this snow is the reason why I'm moving to Florida.
She's moving to Florida for the snow, or because to get away from the snow. Is it snowing out right now? So what I was saying is, just like I open every conversation with what's most important to you. When I'm trying to trigger a no, I'm always asking my counterpart, have you given up on it? And this is not just what I want to definitely double down on it. You're negotiating all the time. You're negotiating with your own clients sometimes because they're being irrational and they're blowing the deal up, right? You're negotiating sometimes with the appraiser to hold that whole thing together, right? Have you given up on, and then I label the emotion behind it. Have you given up on this transaction, which is ultimately going to get you to move to Florida? Have you given up on moving closer to your granddaughter? Whatever the motivation is behind it. Because what you're doing there is you're triggering a no. And once you trigger a no, then you can start loop back around to the labeling process. Okay. Outstanding. So, and this will allow you to start steering the results, right? Specifically, if they have something to lose, right? So this is how you steer results. You start to identify and start to label things a loss gain scenario, kind of like a worst best case scenario, right? And specify if they have something to lose if we don't come to a resolution, and implement a loss associated with that's right or their empathy, right? So once you insinuate that there will be a loss if we don't come to an agreement, people are more likely to want to come to an agreement. For example, if the seller cannot replace the septic tank, it sounds like you'll go back to showing houses for another 3 months, and all this time would have been wasted. I know that would leave me incredibly frustrated and honestly questioning my career. That last was a little theatrical, but you get what I'm saying? It's like, what I'm saying is I'm insinuating a loss and then I'm tying an emotion to it. Because again, what I'm trying to do in negotiations is I'm trying to regulate my emotions, but I'm also trying to regulate theirs. I'm trying to instill them with emotion or de-escalate with them emotion while exhibiting self-control. And remember, you will have more self-control if your pipeline is super fat. So if you guys have not come to the sales force on how to attract clients or talent, you definitely want to do that, because you can't be a strong negotiator unless you're less emotionally invested in the end result. And that's how you emotionally. So what we were talking about is people negotiating against themselves. You're going to let them start to bargain against themselves. Allow people to present you with the solution. And you can do this by spelling out the situation. So it sounds like where we're at is we're not coming to a solution. Because your seller is looking to give no concessions, even though that and I completely understand that, because they've lived in this house for so many years, raising their family in it, they establish a certain value on it. However, you as a professional understand that there is some deferred maintenance. But I also have some buyers that were in the same position that your sellers were when they purchased the house. And it sounds like they don't want to give any concessions, but my buyers can't afford to buy the house. So what would you have me do going forward? Ask them a question and allow them to try to find a solution. Because if I'm already aligned, and if I'm asking them to find a solution for me, now they're doing the work, they'll start racking their brain, especially if they're salespeople, because salespeople are, especially in real estate, entrepreneurs, are we solution-based or not solution-based? We're extremely solution-based. How many of us are, we love to, I forget what it is. It's like almost like a codependence. Like people give us their problems and we just want to solve them all the time. Is that just me or is that, right? I know I've definitely burned a couple of relationships because I need to understand, is this, are you telling me this because you just want me to listen or do you want me to solve this problem? Because I'll immediately go to solving the problem. So this is we don't always have to solve every problem that's presented to us. Matter of fact, if we're getting to a hard no, let's see if the other party can give some type of solution. And then what we can do is we can start to pivot the issues from that. Because the great thing about real estate is we can negotiate with three major factors. It's not always about money, right? It could be about repairs and it could be about time. Because these are usually the three motivating factors in a real estate sale or pretty much any sale minus the repairs and other ones, right? So you can start to offer different solutions or you can start to frame different. So what would you have me do? Is there a way we can come to terms where maybe the seller would give in a concession and we can speed up the time or slow down the time? This is why knowing the why is so important and knowing their motivation. If I know they want to move to Florida to be closer to their grandchildren, and this has been a dream of theirs for years, and they're finally getting around to doing it, I would think that I can leverage time pretty quickly, right? Or I would think that, maybe we can get super creative about, talking about paying for the moving truck out of pocket if they will give a larger concession towards closing costs or something of that nature, right? So when you're addressing, this is just some small tips that I've read throughout books throughout the years. When you're addressing numbers, always sign up odd numbers because when you're assigning even numbers to a lot of numbers, which we do in real estate pretty often, $1,500, $10,000, whatever, it sounds like more of a placeholder. It seems like you're open to more of a negotiation. Now, if you are presenting some type of concession or you're presenting some type of reduction in price, if you're putting exact numbers in there, it sounds like a calculated number. Like there's been research done behind it. The other thing is do your research as well, because a lot of times I'll just get blanket numbers like, hey, they want a $10,000 concession. Okay, outstanding. I completely understand. Can you get a little more specific about that? How did you come to the number 10,000? And it's specifically, what are they for? Oh, it's for this, and this. Okay, outstanding. Can you send me over the information that you've collected to warrant that $10,000? Because based on my experience, it seems like that would be more of a $5,500 seller credit. And I don't want to start off at a place that's unfair to the seller, which gets him to completely turn off to the idea of any negotiation, right? So then all I'm doing is I'm giving the work back to them because we should be coming prepared, right? Always set deadlines, urgency, urgency, condensing sales cycles, condensing negotiations. This is future-cating as well. So what we're doing is we're painting what the next steps are going forward, but we're also setting deadlines. Deadlines create urgency, and also and we want to give reasons to support the deadline. For example, when I was talking about what the next steps would be, is that I will type the addendum, I will have my client sign it, I will send it over to you. If you can get it back to me within 24 hours, what I can do is order the appraisal right away. Because I know that your clients moving to Florida is super important to them and they want to do that as quickly as possible. And I definitely want to order that appraisal because sometimes that can take, and I have no control of how long that can take. Sometimes it takes longer than others, right? So we're supporting it with reasons as to why we're setting deadlines. This thing keeps falling off. We've already given a couple of answers. All right, we're going to do this through calibrated questions, right? Calibrated questions. We already talked about what's most important to your client. At this point, we want to avoid the yes and no asking questions. Calibrated questions are more open-ended questions, right? So if you're not getting a level of commitment from people, this allows the other party to start to explain more as to why you're not getting a yes or why you're not getting a no, right? So you can start to collect more information. What about this is important to your client? How am I supposed to do that? Again, this opens them up to talking more, right? And when other people talk more, again, we've already talked about how they feel valued. They feel like it's fair. They feel listened to. But you're also opening it up to more information to find better solutions. And that's when we can leverage time, repairs, or money. We can start to offer different types of solutions because hopefully you've already talked to your client, understand what's most important to them. I have many clients, they don't want to do any repairs. They just want to give concessions because they're not in the state it's easy as possible. I have a great deal of other many clients that they want to give repairs because it's cheaper for them to repair it because maybe they're a licensed contractor or their brother is or something like that. So at this point, you're going to label and repeat their requests and then ask them the open-ended questions. So here's the point of a calibrated question right here is you're aligning them with your objectives. You're asking for their intelligence. You're giving them a sense of control. We've all gone over all these things, but Socrates says learning is remembering. You add as if they think you're asking them to create a solution and allows them to develop a positive feeling. And we've already established the more positive the feeling, the more positive feeling, the more likely they are to try to move forward with it. All right, outstanding. We're starting to come to the end, baby. And then you guys can network more. How many of you guys like the food? Was the food good? No? Yeah. All right, outstanding. So at this point, asking open-ended questions. Did we already just go through this one? No, we did. All right, awesome. So, all right. So at this point, avoid the yes and no by asking open-ended questions, right? And that allows the other party to explain more things. So here's an example for a follow-up. Your idea, so this is like a really powerful one right here. So your idea and your solution is generous, but I'm sorry, I just don't think that it's going to work for Sue and Mary. What else would you have me do? Or do you have an alternative, right? So this is like, for example, when I would use this is when I'm negotiating with someone and I'm asking them to provide me with a solution and their solution is greatly unfair or it's more aligned with their objective, before I even go back to it, I'm going to just kind of be direct and firm, but compassionate as well and say, hey, that's generous, or it's generous of you to even take the time to think of that. But I know the sellers and I don't think that that's going to work for them. So I would appreciate if we think of a couple more options as well. Right. But also what this allows you to do is when you start allowing people to come up with solutions, a lot of times it exhausts them. And how many of us have just bought or agreed upon things out of pure exhaustion? We're just like, oh my God, I just want to get this done with. Right. Like if you like, and this is may come across as a little unfair, but if you tire out the other realtor, are they going to have more energy to deal with their client or less energy? They're gonna have less, so they're gonna try to persuade their client to maybe lean more towards your end of the negotiations, to be a little more fair with you. Now we can literally teach a class on negotiation for days and days and days. You know, we try to jam pack as much as possible. You know, and we can recap of a couple of things that we've learned today. But one big point that I definitely want to make is whoever's talking is dominating the conversation, while whoever's asking questions is the one that's controlling the conversation. And what I mean by that is your life is directly correlated with the quality of questions that you ask yourself and other people. Another thing that you can do leaving here today is start asking more questions. If you ask more questions of yourself and other people, you'll then, through the laws of quantity, start to ask higher quality questions. When you ask high quality questions and you can listen to the answer and start labeling another person and their feelings and their motivations, you can then start dictating or directing the direction in which a conversation goes. A lot of times we don't do this. So what we've learned here today is negotiation is not a battle of the will. We're not here to square off with people and be mean to them and intimidate them. Matter of fact, it's aligning ourselves with them and start de-escalating that. And we do that by identifying with them. We do that by starting positive, We do that by listening to them. If we don't, just because we listen to them, we acknowledge that we're listening to them, and it doesn't mean we need to agree with them. And then we do that by starting to label exactly what it is that they're going through or their clients are going through. And then what we can do from there is start to future-cate and start to pace and lead them to an alternative solution. If that alternative solution is not to be agreed upon, then you start asking them to come up with alternative solutions as well. They'll once again start back at the beginning of the negotiation cycle, feeling appreciated, feeling affirmed, feeling empowered. They will offer many solutions. And then you can either confirm or deny whether those are going in the right direction. So that being said, how many of us have one thing that they think they can leave here today and potentially create some value? Outstanding. So anytime I come to a training, that is my number one purpose. I want one thing. Anytime I'm teaching and training, I want one person to pick up one thing that they can implement immediately. And it doesn't need to be a big thing. A lot of times it's the smallest things done consistently over time that make the biggest difference. So once we're done with these next 2 slides, I would really appreciate it if somebody would be bold enough to talk about one thing that they've learned that they think they can immediately implement that can impact their business going forward. Upcoming trainings. So we have a great training. This next one is going to be a real estate panel. It's Real World's real estate panel. There's going to be this, we're going to have 2 panels in this session, this 8-course session. And one of them is seasoned real estate agents. This will be the seasoned real estate agents. They're going to be explaining all different types of things like professional courtesy, how to deal with difficult situations. There's going to be about 4 or 5 of them. And that's on 118 right there. That will be right here in this room. Right. Also, I just wanted to give myself a quick, I wanted to endorse what Jamaica's doing. Jamaica's doing the Legacy Wealth Builders. That's on 114. If you guys want to go to that, that's going to be at the Omni Hotel. It's going to be pretty big. There we go. So she's bringing in other people to, not only is she an authority figure, but she's bringing other people from other professions as well. It's not important to just learn how to generate income. It's really important how to keep it and then how to duplicate it, right? Because I tell the realtors that work with me, I can teach you guys how to be great salespeople. But if you guys don't know how to keep it, meaning like not give it to the government, then that's really going to hurt you. You're never going to build wealth. And then once you learn how to keep it, if you don't learn how to duplicate it, have your money work for you, you will have no freedom. And one of the reasons why we get into this business is financial freedom and freedom of time. Leveraging the money that you make allows you to do that. Those are some of the things that we'll be talking about there. And then lastly, me and my team, we just opened up a little Stratford office. So I'm going to start throwing some events there. It's in Stratford. It's a little further away, but I'm going to be throwing an event on the 19th. It's going to be, I don't know why it says 12. It's supposed to be 5 to 7:30, right? I'll provide dinner, but what it's going to be is going to be art of conversation. What we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about how do you start a conversation with anyone? Because often we're at networking events and we get intimidated and we don't know how to approach people. How do we become a good opener? And then once we start that conversation, how do we continue that conversation over time without running dry and just saying, okay, and then having that awkward back out moment where you just want to exit really quickly, right? And then how do we have extremely difficult conversations? We're going to be going in more depth about how do we de-escalate emotions, how we explain situations to people, things of that nature. Right. So it's going to be an outstanding event if you guys can make that. So in regards to the event here for RAMP, you are going to get an email from Rachel. She's going to be the one sending out those so you can sign up for the next RAMP program for that. And then for the rest of you guys have some flyers on there. They have QR codes if you want to come to one of our other events. Now, I'm going to mention one last thing, and then we're going to have some other people just share one thing that they agreed with. And this is this right here. So does everyone know who this is? That's fair, right? So this has been an organization that we've been raising money for many years. You know, as real estate agents, a lot of us believe in the American dream, and that American dream is often painted in what's called home ownership. Now, I do believe that there's more American dreams. There's as many American dreams as there are Americans, but it's symbolized through home ownership. And we help people that have the luxury, and many of us have the luxury to have that home ownership. But there's a lot of people that don't have that luxury. There's a lot of people that gain that luxury, and maybe life deals them hard cards, and they end up getting that luxury taken away. and their family ends up in homeless shelters. So what this program is you can sponsor a patting the bear. Each bear costs $25. And then what we do is the money goes towards keeping families with children out from being homeless. Now, some of them are already in homeless shelters, family shelters. Some of them are on their way there, and we help with their electrical bills or something like that to prevent them from it. Because once they're homeless, it's really hard to get out of that rut. So what we do is we have some signups in the back. If you guys, if you had a great year and you believe in the American dream, I urge you guys to support this. I know for the last couple of years, we've raised tens of thousands of dollars for this. And there's been a couple of years where, we've definitely, so the children get a gift and the parents get the gift of security. So the children get the comfort of this, or sometimes it's a binder or a backpack or something like that, right? So real quick, who's gonna be bold? What is one thing? Bam.
So you talk about being told, I've done this 20 years, whatever, and then getting defensive and responding with anger. I can think to a deal that I did early in my career that exact thing happened. I had a listing. The agent who was representing the buyer came hard at me, and I was scared. Right? Like I was nervous. I didn't know what to do, and I went right back at him because that's what I do.
Yeah.
And just I've seen a lot of this stuff before, but you explained really well, and I'm going to put a lot more effort on the de-escalation and just being able to understand that the way someone else is acting has nothing to do with the way I act, and I have to lead in order to be successful. So it really rang home.
Thank you. Exhibiting self-control. I love it. Not succumbing to societal norms.
I'm just gonna be bold in a different way. Your date is wrong. It's 2023.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. Did you learn anything? I learned something like you. So no, but honestly though, that's a great point. Like that's observation right there, right? Candidly, I didn't make these slides, so that's okay. But that's observation. And in order to be a good negotiator, you need to be very observant, right? How are you going to mirror match people? You observe that. There's someone in the back. Yeah.
I was gonna say, something I already knew, but using clients' names to humanize them. It's very easy to say my client or your client. It just creates empathy and credibility.
Yeah, it's another form of tactical empathy right there, aligning people.
I'd say the best one for negotiations, kind of suggesting, what would you do, or how would you handle this?
Allow them to negotiate against.
Yeah, so they literally provide you the solution that.
Exactly, leverage their ability, and then we'll do one more, and then I'm gonna hop if someone on Zoom wants to say one.
People are terrified of silence, so if you just inject strategically silence into a conversation, they're going to fill it with probably more information than you need. But I've gotten a ton of information just by not saying anything. And people are just like, I don't know what to do, so let me just tell you more about my client. Let me tell you more about where we're at right now. And I've gotten things like what they're willing to spend and what concessions are important to them, just by not saying anything. People can't handle silence. It makes them very uncomfortable.
I agree with that 100%. Does anyone in Zoom want to contribute?
Well, for me, I relearned about active listening. So, that's what I want to contribute to the cause of what everybody is talking about right now. See how I did that, Alan?
Yes. I see how you did that. I love speak subject very bold, and history favors the bold. So, all right, outstanding. Thank you guys. I'll be up here if you have any questions. You guys are going to come.
Thank you.
Sure.